G'day, it's your old mate Matthew here from the Yarnsman podcast. Today we have Stephen Penny on. Bit of a trigger warning. We get into a few things, including suicide, mental health, grief, and stillbirth. But still a very good yarn. I hope you enjoy it. Good morning and welcome to the Yarnsman podcast. This morning we have Stephen Penny. He is a father, a husband, a yarnsman. He's been to two.
I've been to two, yes.
And a successful businessman as well. Good morning, Stephen.
Good morning. How are you, Matthew?
I'm good. Fresh off the back of another fantastic yarnsman.
Yeah, it was good to listen to Tim, and as we said just before we came on air, it's good to see that somebody else who's an elite sportsman was still getting nervous before he talked in front of a group of blokes. And that's makes you feel a bit better when you see somebody of that level that's also a little bit nervous doing this kind of thing.
Yeah, well, the thing I take away, many takeaways, is he's a normal guy. I mean, he's a fantastic guy, but he's just a normal dude, which is great. Yeah. Launching into it, mate, what have you struggled with in the last week?
The last week has been, it's been an up and down week for me. It's my wedding anniversary today, 27 years married today, which is awesome. But on Tuesday was my mum's birthday, and it's the first birthday since she passed away in January this year. So a lot of time thinking about her and my dad, who's back in the UK on his own. And it was just, it was a very quiet day Tuesday for me, just a lot of reflection and feeling like a little bit of regret that maybe I could have been a bit better of a son for my mum. But I think that's part of the process that you go through, that you look back and you think, could I have done anything different, or would I have done anything different? And, so that was a bit of a low point for me. And, I managed to persuade my wife and my two daughters to go out for lunch, and we had a bit of a lunch. And on that day, and talked about my mum a little bit, and talked about ourselves a little bit, and it was kind of a nice memory overlaid on a sad day. So that was my struggle this week.
Yeah, that is tough, but I want to try and just maybe ask a positive question there on the same 27 years of marriage.
Yes,
that's something to be celebrated.
It is, yes. It's been a journey, I have to say. It's been a journey with Chrissy, my wife. We've had a few ups and downs in our marriage, as I think lots of people do. But we've kind of fought our way through them. And I think the bit for us is we're both incredibly stubborn people, and we weren't going to let anything get in the way. We've had a few things, and we're going to talk about one of the things that have happened to us in our married life that, have made things a bit tougher than you'd like. But we've got three fantastic kids, and we've had 27 years together, and we haven't killed one another. So all good.
All positive.
Yes.
Looking ahead to next week, what would you like to work on?
I think with what I've been through this week with my mum, one of the things I've reflected on is that I need to cut myself a bit of slack. That I'm 12,000 miles away from my mum. I couldn't have done much to help beyond what I did. And also the grieving process is difficult, and just give myself some time to deal with it, and that's something that I'm reflecting on at the moment, and that's what I'm going to work on over the next weeks and months, is allowing myself the time to do what I need to do, really.
Good.
Yeah.
We'll get into that, I'm sure, in the next part.
Yes, indeed.
What are you proud of?
Well, I mentioned my kids. I think they're the thing I'm proud of. I think my business as well. I think it's been a roller coaster journey in the business as well. 6 years this year rather. Sorry, and it's been a tough couple of years, but we're coming out the other side of that after the trials and tribulations of COVID. So it's nice to see that we're still doing well, and we're well respected in the industry that we work in, which is really good. But also my kids are great. One of them's here working for me at the moment, and she's doing a great job working for me, and has got her own life going on, and it's great. And my youngest daughter is she's studying to be a vet, and by all accounts actually smashing it out of the park at the moment. So that's really good. And my son's just he's struggling a little bit with a few things, but he's still a good person and still doing good things. And it's just nice to see them growing up. It's it's a bit of a legacy for me, having three kids, and that's what I'm going to leave behind, really. Not a lot else other than the kids.
Yeah, cool. I like that.
Yeah.
I mean, we might have to get one of them on to fixing that chair so I don't fall off it for the second time. But
yes, so we'll get that sorted.
That's on me. What gives you hope?
What gives me hope? I think, there's lots of different things, actually. I think the fact that I've been through a lot of things in my life, and I'm still doing okay. and the fact that I get a lot of support from my family. That all the stuff that's been going on with me and my depression and other things, they've stuck by me through all of it, and they've been there every time I've needed, either a bit of reassurance or a hug or whatever it may be, or a kick up the backside, which is mostly what I need, I think, is a kick up the backside.
Clearly.
So I think having a supportive family is massively underrated how important that is, and I think that we all should be very thankful if you have that sort of safety net around you. And that really gives me hope that that for the future for me. I know I'm going to be struggling with my depression forever probably. So knowing that network's there gives me hope that I'll get through whatever happens next.
It's great to hear that support. And just hearing you talk, I'm reflecting on some things I've heard this week, and now I'm really conscious as the yarnsman we don't do. Mm-hmm. Depression is a journey. It's dynamic. It's not static, and a lot of the things that are put out there are, do this and you'll be great. No, it's a balancing act. It's an ever moving beast, and I talk now about social health. I think we touched on that last week. Diet, exercise, sleep, and connection. Connection being a big one for me. So we're saying there's things you can do to help and balance you out. It's not a destination. It's a journey.
It is. I mean, I've recognised at the start of my depression journey was quite a long time ago, and didn't realise at the time what it was, and just took me decades basically to work out what was going on, and it's only really in the last 5 years that I've actually started to get a handle on what's happening and seeing the things that trigger it and being aware of those things early enough to be able to change things around so that I don't get into the dark spaces that I used to get into, and that's taken me a long time to work that out, and it's I think a part of that is not recognising that there was an issue and kind of putting it out of my mind because I just feel a bit sad. So, and it really isn't that at all. There's a lot more to it than that, and I've put myself in difficult positions as a result of not really considering what was going on and not asking for the help that I really needed, and that's something that I'm now that I've worked it out for myself. I'm quite happy to talk about my journey because I think it's important that we recognise that there's ways of dealing with this and ways of not dealing with it that can be quite harmful. And I think there's still quite a lot of stigma, particularly for men, about depression. It's you look at somebody, you can't tell they're depressed from the outside. You can see somebody who's got a broken arm or a broken leg, but you can't see somebody who's depressed. And a lot of the time, the people you think are sad are really not the ones that are the ones to worry about. The ones that are putting on a front of being happy and jolly are usually the ones that have got a lot more going on. And I think that's something we need to talk about more as well. So yeah.
Well, I've got a whole lot of questions to ask you from okay. that. But let's dive into it, mate. Yep. What's the yarn? The
yarn. I think I touched on that. There's been a few things in my married life that have been quite challenging. So I know that Chrissy won't mind me telling this story, but when we got married in 1997. So it's 27 years ago today. And shortly after we got married, my wife fell pregnant, and that was sort of in the middle of 1999. And in November of 1999, she went for a regular scan, and I got a phone call to work telling me that there was a problem, which was, I've got to say, pretty terrifying. Rushed up to the hospital, got to the hospital to find out that the doctors advised that our baby was not going to survive to term, and that we would most likely die in utero at some point, and we were advised that the best thing to do was to terminate the pregnancy. And at the time, Chrissy was about 23 weeks pregnant, so we'd gone past the milestone of an abortion, and what we actually had to consider doing is have the baby terminated and then go through a full delivery process. So Chrissy had to go into labour, induced labour. She was in labour before that happened, we then had another scan, and in between the first and the second scan, the baby had actually died. So we didn't have to make the decision to terminate the baby, which I don't know how we would have got through that. If I'm honest, I don't know how we got through what we got through. But the idea of killing your own child, even if you know that there's no other option, it's I don't think any parent ever could go through that and be whole again. To be honest, so in some ways I'm quite pleased that the baby actually died before we had to make that decision. But it was, it was a horrible situation to be in for both of us. We were very new in our marriage. Our relationship was a bit of a whirlwind. We met in 1996. We got engaged in 1996, and we got married in 1997. So there wasn't a lot of time of getting to know one another really. And 27 years later, we're still together. So obviously, it worked.
When you know, you know.
Basically, yeah. But we still at that point we were still only 2 years into our married life, and not really knowing one as intimately as you do over a marriage, and just neither of us really knew how to deal with what was going on. We were offered the opportunity to see our baby after Chrissy had delivered him. We both declined it because we thought it would be too upsetting, and spent the next 2 or 3 days just unable to do anything. Like both of us were just in bits, couldn't think about anything, couldn't do anything, couldn't really talk to one another. And I went to see my GP because I was just feeling bloody awful, to be honest. GP gave me some antidepressant tablets, which is the first time I'd ever had any kind of antidepressant tablets. I took a few of them. I didn't really get on with them, made me feel a bit crap. But then I then went to Chris and said, look, I think I need to see him. I think that the problem I was having is I couldn't close that issue out because I didn't know how to. We phoned up the hospital and asked if it would be possible, and they said, unfortunately, because of the condition, no, it's not, but we did take a photograph. If you want to see the photograph, come and see us. So we went to the hospital, we got the Polaroid photograph of our baby, and at that point we said we need to do something to mark that this has happened. So we arranged with the hospital to have a funeral ceremony, and that was, it was a good thing to do, but it was bloody horrendous. I mean, it was, the coffin was like an A3 sheet of paper size on my lap in the church, and it was difficult to persuade people to come because everyone was really not sure how to deal with the situation.
Well, people, it's the classic thing of people either really supportive or they're really avoid it because they don't know what to say. Yeah,
pretty much. And the things that came out of that, that whole experience for me is that I chose a really good best friend because he was fantastic. Him and his wife are still, I'm still very close to them, even though we're on the other side of the world. But they were just amazing, just absolutely amazing. And really, that's how me and Chrissy got through that day and the days after that as well, because they were just there. And whenever I needed anything, it was just, well, pick up the phone or come and see me or whatever, and I'm there. And I think having that kind of relationship is, absolutely amazing, and it's so important that you have somebody that, no matter what, has got your back. It just makes a huge difference to anybody's life, I would say. And over the time since then, I do reflect on what we went through with William, and his name's William. Born on the 22nd of November 1999, so he's always in my mind. There's a memorial page in the hospital. There's a memorial book in the hospital chapel where we've got his name written on one of the pages. So if we want to commemorate him, we go on the 22nd of November. That page is open. We can see his name there, and I think that's it's just marking that event happened and not ignoring it. And I think that was the issue that we had. We were almost trying to pretend it hadn't happened because we didn't know how to deal with it, and actually accepting that it happened and dealing with a funeral process which gives you a bit of closure about the whole event was so important, because it meant that we could move on, and it was horrible and incredibly sad and all those things, but actually having gone through that process, it gave us somewhere to go afterwards, that we've been through this experience. We've dealt with it in a way that allowed us to move on in a sort of sensible fashion, and we've gone through it together as well. We made all of the decisions together. It wasn't one of us forcing the other one to do things. I think that was really important, that we agreed on the process that we were going to go through, because we both went through it. And Chrissy certainly, I would say, had the worst half of the experience, because she had to do the labour and give birth to a stillborn baby, which to this day is something that is horrible. It never goes away, that feeling. But what we found out is that there's a lot of people that go through that experience. They just don't talk about it. But we had friends and relatives that came up to us and said, look, we've been through a similar thing. And since then, I've had friends who've had babies that have passed away, and I've sort of said, we've been through that as well. It's not something you publicly share, really. I mean, I am now, but it's a long time ago. But there's a lot of people that have a similar experience, and I think it's really important that they are aware that they're not alone, because it does make you feel very lonely.
Why do you think that people don't share? Because there's a number of, let's call it taboo topics that people don't share, and I think we've touched on a few of them before.
Yeah. Why do I think people don't share? I think because it's really... I think a lot of it is, from my point of view, a lot of it is because you don't want to deal with other people's reactions. Because, like you said, people don't know how to deal with it. And you get reactions from, oh, well, never mind, you'll probably have another baby. Through, which is, I mean, to be honest, somebody says that to me immediately after my baby's died, I'm probably going to try and kill him.
Yeah.
Because there is nothing worse than hearing somebody, oh, you probably have another one. Because that's not the point, and it's that sort of reaction. I think you just want to avoid it.
No, that makes 100%.
Because it's just, I don't want to deal with your stupidity on top of my grief.
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of it, but I also think that there's a part of you that doesn't want to put other people through that process as well. That it's horrible, and even talking to somebody else and telling them that you've been through it, unless they've been through it themselves, they're not really going to understand, because it's too difficult to understand, I think. And you're just putting them in a place where they're trying to deal with something that they've got no idea how to deal with. And I think a lot of the time, for me personally, it was not wanting to deal with the idiots, but also not wanting to put people that I cared about in that position, in a way that they would really struggle to deal with it. But having said that, all three of my kids, all know about William and what we went through, because we're not ashamed of the process. It's not something we're hiding because we're ashamed of what happened. It's more about us managing our grieving process, I guess, and how we interact with other people around us. But all the close family know. My best friend Lawrence obviously knows, and a few other people know, and now quite a few more people probably. But it's part of. For me at the time, it was part of just dealing with what we were going through, trying to keep it a bit private, I guess, rather than secret.
Yeah. Well, that's quite a story there, and it's that thing of the taboo topics, but we should talk about them so that people become aware and prepared.
Well, I think it's also about showing that you can get through it as well. There's it feels like the end of the world at the time, and it really did feel like the end of the world at the time. And when we fell pregnant with my eldest, Caitlin, the healthcare system in the UK is amazing. Whatever you say about how it's doing at the moment, and for my entire life, people have been telling me the NHS is broken, and it's still doing a fantastic job. So, but they were amazing, because this cystic hygroma that William had on his body is something that is a genetic issue. So we had a whole load of tests done on us, and we had a whole load of tests done all the way through each of the pregnancies subsequently, to make sure we weren't going to get a repeat situation. And fortunately we didn't, but the first pregnancy and even the second pregnancy with Jonathan, they were horrible, because we were terrified what was going to happen. It's a silly thing. It's a really silly thing when I think about it now, but it's something that I did when William passed away. I started not shaving, and it was kind of just, initially it was because I couldn't be bothered, but then it became a thing for me that I wouldn't have a shave again until I had a baby in my arms.
Right.
So I didn't shave until Caitlin was born, and that that's something that I marked by having a shave again.
How long are we talking in terms of growth?
It was only 2 years.
Right.
It wasn't too
Which
bad.
is, I'm thinking, is a solid beard.
Yeah, it was pretty solid. Yeah, it was probably
Yeah.
similar to your growth, I would say, when I shaved it.
Did people ask you about your
Yes,
beard?
and that was one of the reasons I did it, because I wanted people to ask, so that I could. It's weird. I mean, I know I said I didn't want to share it, but if people were curious as to why I was doing it, then I would tell them. It wasn't something I went out of the way to talk about.
Yeah.
But I wasn't afraid of talking about it, and I've just realised it was 97. He was born, not because my daughter Caitlin was 99. So
Right.
I don't know how I managed to get that wrong, but 22nd of November 97. So we were married in July 97, and he was born in November 97.
Right.
Yep.
I like the growing the beard, the subtleness, because people do ask you
Yeah.
about why you're growing your beard. Now they have dates and things to grow a beard, but that's a really nice touch.
Yeah, it's just something that, I mean, it didn't start off as a thing to do because of that reason, but it became something in my mind that it was something that I was, because growing a beard's not a comfortable thing to do for me. You get lots of issues with your face itching, and then you find you've got food stuck in it, and it's just a thing. But it became a way of me accepting that I was going through something, and of dealing with it in a visible way that people that knew, and a few close friends asked, and I told them, and then they wish they hadn't asked. But that's part of the process for me. It was part of dealing with what I'd gone through. It's just marking that there'd been an event that had changed me, and the beard was because I'd always been clean shaven, so it changed me in a visible way. Then it's not just an internal thing, and I think it allowed me to mark what had happened and be aware of what had happened. But then also, when Caitlin came along, I was able to shave off and be happy that we'd gone through that process and come out the other side.
Yeah, cool. So, thinking about your depression, is that something that started around that time?
I would say probably before then, because when I was in my early 20s, I had a cycling accident, and I managed to break my collarbone really badly. Broke it in two places. I think they call that a compound fracture or something. I don't remember, but the middle bit of the collarbone rotated and was sticking up. So I had to have a plate inserted eventually. But for the first 3 or 4 weeks, I was left with my arm in a sling and told to go away and it would fix itself, which it didn't. And I went back to the hospital and they said, no, that's never going to fix. I don't know why we sent you away. We should have put a plate in straight away. But during that 3 or 4 weeks, I wasn't sleeping because of the amount of pain I was in. And I became really depressed. It was circumstantial, but it was definitely depression. I considered killing myself at one point during that period of time because I was so in so much pain and didn't see a way out. It was just, I can't cope with this. I couldn't move really. If I sat down, getting up was agony, and I had to sit down because I couldn't stand up all the time. I couldn't really lay down in bed because I couldn't get out of bed if I did. So that period of time, it was specific to me breaking my collarbone, but it became very clear that there was something else going on. That if I get to a point where things get a bit much, then I'm not coping very well at all. But I didn't really recognise it at that point. That's what was going on. It's only subsequently reflecting on what I went through that I've realised that there was something else there. One of my friends at the time, she phoned me up and spoke to me for about 5 minutes. She said, I'm coming round. And I went, no, I'm fine. She went, no, you're not, I'm coming round. And she came round and she sat with me all night. And she said to me a couple of years later, I did that because I thought you were going to kill yourself from the way you were talking. I thought that you're going to do something stupid. So I came round and spent the night. And, that was just sat there talking, didn't do anything else.
Well, that's great that you've got a friend that
absolutely.
Have the,
The awareness.
Awareness and emotional intelligence to do that. I think we can all kind of learn from that.
It was, when she told me that, it was a long time later when she told me that, it shocked me because I don't think I was really aware that that's where I was at. But when she said it, I kind of thought, I was thinking about taking quite a lot of those pills that I've got actually, you're right, I was in a really bad place. But I mean, I think a lot of the time with depression, it creeps up on you. You don't notice it.
Yeah.
That you don't notice it's there until it's there, and then you're kind of in the depths of it. And one of the things that's come out from my counselling sessions that I've had, and from talking to Chrissy, my wife, about what I'm like, she said to me, Chrissy has said to me, that there are weeks in the past where you've not moved, and I've said, oh, what do you mean? She said, you won't get out of bed, you won't go outside the house, you won't do anything. And I was not aware that that was happening. I didn't know that's what I was like, because you're so far in your head that you're not aware of anything going on around you. And to get someone that obviously loves me and puts up with my madness, to say I didn't know what to do because I couldn't get you out of the house and you were just sinking into this black hole, frightened me. That I was unaware that was going on. If I was on my own, what the hell would have happened?
Right.
It's that sort of thing, because it is a sort of a creeping disease. It's not like breaking your arm. It doesn't suddenly happen. Well, it doesn't for me. Or maybe if it does for other people, but I think for myself, there are things that trigger it, and then over time it gets worse and worse and worse. And if I don't do something to correct those things that are triggering it, then I'll disappear into a dark spiral of the world is a nightmare and nothing's ever going to go right for me ever again, and I might as well give up now. And it's because it's like, well, that's that adage about boiling a frog. It creeps up on you, and you don't notice it's happening until it's too late, unless somebody external does something about it, or if you get good advice, speak to somebody who knows what they're talking about and gives you advice about identifying the trigger points, the things that set you off, and doing something about those things. So, for me, if there's something that's starting to make me catastrophize things, because that's one of my things that I do, is look at every situation and only see the worst outcome. If that starts to happen, I know I've got to change something, and it doesn't have to be much. Like, it can be, right, I'm having a bit of a bad day, I'm going to go out for a drive. Just spend some time out of the office, not staring at my screen and wondering how the hell I'm going to fix something. Or I might go out for a walk around the block, or do something that changes my perspective a bit, and that's one way that I deal with it. And I think that's having those tools that in your toolkit, because that's one of my friends. I said to one of my friends that I didn't like the idea of taking drugs, and what her comment was, it's just a tool. It's just another tool in your toolkit. It's not a bad thing. It's not a great thing, but it's not a bad thing. It's just another way of dealing with the situation you're in. If you're willing to try things, then you've got more chance of getting better at dealing with it. But, I've been on the antidepressants now since 2019, so 6 years, 5 years, sorry. And, they're part of my life. I don't like taking them, but I recognise if I don't take them, then I'm still struggling with stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just part of the journey that I'm on, really.
So how did you go about kind of working out what your triggers were and kind of getting a bit more handle on the reasons why and triggers?
It was all through seeing a psychiatrist. So having regular counselling sessions with a psychiatrist, talking about things that are going on in my life, and what was making me sad and what was making me angry, and all those things. And it's just then recognising certain behaviours, I guess, as an indication that things are going downhill, and things that the major events are a problem. So my mum passing away is a big thing earlier on this year, and there's been a few other big triggers in our life. One of the other things I've recognised is actually earthquakes. I don't cope well with earthquakes at all, which I don't think anybody really does. But I found that when they were happening down here in Christchurch in particular, that every time there was an earthquake, it kind of shook me internally as well. And I was really struggling to deal with one of those things. And what's come out from the conversations I've had with my therapist is that I don't like not being in control. And
right, yeah.
When I lose control of a situation, like when my baby died, the earthquakes, when my mum died, things like that, I've got no control over those situations. It's a trigger for me that I need to find a way of getting back in control again. That's why things like going out for a walk, I can control doing that. I can change my perspective. I can change my scenery. And by doing that, I can take control of things. It's not the thing that I want to take control of, but it's taking control of something.
Yeah.
And by doing that, it allows me to deal with the bigger thing. And I think that's, recognising those things that cause you to start to spiral is you only do that through lots of therapy and talking to somebody who knows what they're talking about.
Right.
Because they can see, you can't see them necessarily. You can't see what's causing you to be like you are. But what she was able to do is say, look, there's a theme here with all of these different things. There's a theme. You haven't got control over them. Because you haven't got control, you feel like you've got no control over anything. And that's the trigger. That's what causes the depression. So it's that sort of third person perspective outside of the situation that was able to give me that sort of clarity. And there's other things around that, talking about my relationship with my father, which is, it's good now, hasn't been good for a long time. But it's, for the last few years, it's been really good and been getting better and better, which is fantastic. But there was recognising that there was a difficult relationship there, and then sort of thinking about where that might have come from, and understanding that people's circumstances are all different, and what drives them to be the way they are is something you need to think about. You need to have some context, and I think that is something that's really only fairly recently come to my mind, is that I look back on situations and I don't really have the context that I need to be able to make an informed decision as to why things were like they were. But I look at my personal situation at home when I was a kid. I always had a nice house to live in. I always had all the clothes I needed to wear for school and for everything else, and always had good food. And so there was nothing in my childhood that was bad. But when I look back on it, there's still things that kind of niggle me a bit. And it's just, but context. You're in a good place. And it's that context that's so important. That if you're struggling with things and you don't take it in context of what else is going on in your life, it can be the only thing you think about. And that, recognising that there's lots going on, and a lot of it is positive and some of it is negative, that helps you deal with the negative stuff.
There's some lots of sort of sage advice in there of reflecting and using a psychologist and being kind of proactive about those things when you get to a point. To kind of finish on, I wanted to talk about grief and how you process that, and what advice you might have for people going through any form of grief.
I think grief is a very personal thing, is one thing I would say for sure. That there's lots of different advice about how many steps of grief there are, but one of the things that I've come to realise is that there are different stages, but they're on in a specific order. They happen however they happen. And I think the other thing I would say is that that grieving is something that everybody has to do. It's not something you can avoid. So I guess my advice would be to let it happen, not try and fight against it, because you don't deal with the loss of somebody without grieving them. And trying to avoid it because it's too difficult is just going to make it worse, in my view. And what I've found with my mum in particular is that she was in the UK, and I spoke to her. I spoke to her she had a stroke on a Sunday in January. And I spoke to her on the Wednesday to tell her I was coming over to the UK and I'd be there on the Friday. And the last thing I said to her was, "Love you, Mum." And she said, "Love you, Steve." And that's the last thing she said to me. And she died a few hours later. And, that having that interaction has probably made a big difference to me. If I hadn't managed to speak to her before she died, I think I've still got some regrets, and wish I'd got there quicker and been able to see her and give her a hug and all those things. But having that chance to say something ahead of time, and also I think the other side of it as well is, with William, we weren't able to have any kind of interaction, and the thing that I've come to realise through my therapy sessions with William is losing a child is different to losing a parent. And the big part of losing a child is not that you're grieving the child's death so much as you're grieving the loss of the potential of that child. Mm-hmm. That you had, when you have a kid, you think, well, they're going to do this and they're going to do that, and they're going to have a great life, and all these things are going to happen. And then they die, and then all of those things don't happen. And you're grieving the loss of the child, but you're also grieving the loss of that potential of what they would have been as an adult. And recognising that there's a big piece of that hangs around if you don't deal with it is also important. And with parents, we know we hope we're going to outlive our parents, all of us, and our parents hope we're going to outlive them as well. But recognising that and making the most of the time you've got, so that when they do pass away, you don't think, oh, I wish I'd done, and I wish I'd said, and I wish I'd, because that's really hard as well, and that's part of my issue with my mum, is that I didn't really say everything I wanted to say and do everything I wanted to do with her, and I don't want my kids to look back and think, I wish I had, because there's always going to be stuff. But try and enjoy the time you've got with your parents and with your kids and with all those around you, because life is a journey, it's not a destination, and if you don't enjoy it as you go, then you will have lots of regrets, and that's the grieving process as well. The grieving process is about remembering somebody and making sure you remember the good stuff, because there's lots of good stuff, and if you focus on the good stuff, it's a lot easier.
Well, this yarn is some of the good stuff, mate. Thank you so much for making the time today and sharing your yarn, and thanks very much.
You're very welcome.